So I'm going to talk to you about open source, which we're all using, and generally we don't care about it, but we really need to start caring about it. So we're going to talk about two things. We're going to talk about licenses, and we're going to talk about vulnerabilities, and what you should be doing about them. So I'm going to drive straight in because it's a lightning talk. So licenses, two types of licenses. Permissive is the one everybody thinks everything is covered in with open source, but it's not true. You also have copyleft, which is where you need to use a bit of caution. So permissive basically means you can take this license, you can modify the library, you can distribute it, you can do pretty much anything with it. Sometimes there's less warranty on those ones, I think. But that's what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the copyleft ones, which are a little bit more dangerous. Copyleft comes in two, do you know, I should be using my notes. I have actually got notes for this. So copyleft comes in two types, weak versus strong. Basically what copyleft means is if you use this package, then the work that you distribute, well, I'm not home, so tough luck. The work that you distribute, you need to apply the same license to it. So if this is an open source copyleft license and you use it, then you are at risk of having to release your source to the public if they were to ask for it. Now that gets a little bit tricky then when you're coming to your company's IP and important stuff like that. Particularly where we see it all the time is I work in due diligence exercises where companies are going through transactions or they want large amounts of investment, that sort of thing. This sort of thing flags up all the time because they won't be able to get the insurance for the investment if you haven't got your open source sorted. Which means something to some of you. The rest of you though, it is, yeah. So let's go through it a little bit. There's two types of copyleft, weak and strong. Strong means you have to release all of the source. So if you include this package in your application, you have to release all the source for the whole application. Weak is a little bit, hasn't been tested in core. A lot of this is a little bit iffy like that, hasn't all been tested in core. Weak means that if you've made modifications to that application or that library, then you need to release that as open source, but not the whole rest of your package. The most common is GPL. Now GPL is a little bit, this is where the web developers will be breathing a sigh of relief, because GPL says you only have to do that if you're distributing it. So that is an application that you send out somewhere to be installed, or a mobile application. Where it gets a little bit more tricky is it does include downloaded assets from a website. So if you've got a JavaScript library that you're using and that is downloaded to the computer's browser, that is a distributed application. The really nasty one is AGPL, which classes distribution as making your software available over the network. So that includes websites and all the rest of it. So that is what to watch out for. Have I covered everything in there? Of course, I'm not going anywhere near as fast enough, so let's move on. So recommendations, what do you do to resolve that scary potential? Have an open source policy, right? That's the number one thing, right? Have an open source policy, just apply to it. They just ask ChatGPT. It should have acceptable and unacceptable licenses. So permissive, MIT, BSD, the other ones. Great, they're all fine. You could have it in your policy saying those, we don't need to even think about those. Check on the version of the age. Have a process in place for when you're adding new stuff, and have a process for monitoring your old stuff as well, because sometimes these licenses change. And this will come back to over and over again. Use a tool. So I'm going to demo a OWASP dependency track at the end of this, but SNCC have a free version and a paper version. Mend, I don't think they have a free version, but they do all sorts of stuff. OWASP dependency track is free. GitHub obviously has loads of plugins now that you can use actually within your repository for checking this sort of stuff. It's pretty straightforward to set this up. If you've got a deployment pipeline, stick one of these in it and away you go. Okay, vulnerabilities. Number 6, I don't know what's going on with OWASP, and someone can tell me afterwards, but it looks like they haven't updated since 2021, and I don't know what's going on with the OWASP 10. But they were number 6 then. I think it's probably higher than that now, of being of the risk of vulnerability in a piece of open source library that you're using in your application being exploited, was their number 6. There is a central database for these things. Let me get my notes again. Oh yeah, this was an interesting stat. A quarter of organisations continue to run without any open source policy. Of those that do have an open source policy, only 68% actually follow it, and only 22 organisations have actually banned open source component to have found vulnerabilities. So generally, the awareness of this sort of stuff is really low, but it needs to be much higher because there's loads of vulnerabilities. On average, a known vulnerability takes a year to be fixed in an open source dependency. And worse than that, it takes 4 years for it to be widely adopted. So that vulnerability is just sat there. If it's in your website, it's sat there open to the world. So, what can you do about it? Move on. Thank you. Use tooling in your development pipeline. So at least once every release, have it scan your open source. Ideally, have it ping a ticket into Jira to say there's a vulnerability found. When you have that, then log the vulnerability. So you don't necessarily have to fix this, you don't necessarily have to upgrade your version, because some of these vulnerabilities are using a section of the code that just isn't available to the internet, isn't going to impact you. But certainly if you're going through due diligence, you need to accept the risk or fix it, basically. You say, right, we've assessed that, it's not a problem, or we've upgraded the version. Like I say, most vulnerabilities don't get fixed for 4 years, don't get adopted for 4 years, so the chances are there'll be a fix out there for you. Okay, not doing too bad for time. So, demo. So, some of you will know Chester Devs has a website. So I'm going to demo, where was I going to go? Right, so let's talk about the BOM, the S-BOM, which stands for Bill of Materials. I recently did some work for a construction firm and found out that Bill of Materials is a real thing that exists outside. Software Bill of Materials is obviously applied to us. So this is a BOM I generated on the Chester Devs website. Now, Chester Devs website is using .NET Core 2, so it's bad, and I should really do something about it, but I haven't. So you can see this is what it is, right? This is a Cyclone DX formatted JSON S-BOM. So it's got a list of all my components, it's got the versions, bit of description, got the license, etc., etc., etc. I use the Cyclone DX tool to kind of generate that. So you build your application, you point Cyclone DX at your solution, because this is .NET, and it will then generate this. But Cyclone DX, they've got tools for pretty much any language you can think of, including Python. That you then upload into OWASP dependency track. So OWASP dependency track, I've got it running locally. They have a lovely Docker version. You just upload, get your Docker Compose file. Away you go. Seconds later, you've got this running. And this gives you, so if I had multiple projects, you could see this would give me my vulnerabilities over time. There are some other things in here from projects that I've now deleted because I'm not allowed to show you what they were. They're not mine. If we go into the actual project, I should bring my notes back up as well, shouldn't I? Go into projects, Chester Devs. This is really weird using it this way. So it gives you a list of all the components. So I can go into all my components here, I can click on them, I can see the details. You can see it does give you a detail on the version. So these ones say it's an outdated component. It doesn't say there's a vulnerability with it necessarily, but it says this version, that there's a newer version of this component. You should probably think about upgrading. The vulnerabilities is obviously where things get a little bit interesting. So you can see I'm using .NET 2, but .NET Core 2, as it was called when it actually got released. That's how long ago it was. So that most of the stuff is Java, is Microsoft. In fact, I think all the stuff in here is Microsoft. I can click on these. You see this CVE? That is from the National Database, National Vulnerability Database. It gives me details of what it is, gives me their score, and gives me extra details about it if I wanted them. The other thing it has is then over here, where am I? Some vulnerabilities. I want to go back to. Oh, there we go. Policy violations. So policy violations, you can set up rules. So I've set up a rule, I'll show you in a minute, that says basically if there is any license that is not permissive, then flag that. So you can see we've got all sorts of stuff in here. Sometimes, some of these, well, most of them probably aren't that bad. So the first thing you do is you have loads of them, and then you go through like MOQ, for example. If we click on MOQ, it says license is not permissive. View the details of MOQ, which happens to know is absolutely fine, legal. There's a license URL but haven't been able to detect what license it is. Crap, I've got 5 minutes left. Now when you go to it, it's actually BSD clause 3, so that is actually a permissive license, so I'm okay on that. You can actually, you can go in there and I can actually update that in here and say that is, I'm not going to do it because I haven't got time. And then rerun your scan and that violation will go away. So it is dead easy. You can plug this in, it's all sorts of extended, you can put this into your pipeline as with all the other tools. We worked with one company, it took them 2 days, I think, as well as doing other things to get this set up, and 2 weeks to fix all the issues. So it really is, if you've already got a pipeline, this is dead easy to set up and it covers you. That's it. That's my 10 minutes, that wasn't too bad. 10 minutes, 30 seconds, but don't tell anyone. Oh, sorry, what I will do though, really don't tell anyone this. I will, if you wanted it, I want to take a photo of it. So, there's the resources. Such one DX tool, dependency track. That is choose a license, gives you details on all the various licenses that are out there. OWASP guidance on what you should have in your policy. And then this is really nice, this to-do group. I've got loads of example policies that you should have for your open source, if you want them. So that was cheating. Any questions?
Have you got any example high-profile cases where they've messed up with their open source licensing?
None that I'd be allowed to talk about. But like I say, most companies don't even, it doesn't figure on their radar. The first time, and I can say this because they have a good policy, was Bet365, and I thought, well, why can't I use NuGet? And they had their own version of NuGet where they had to, they literally have to sanitize anything that, or they check anything that you want from NuGet and they load it into their own NuGet version, and you can only use that to download stuff. But some companies are distributing software, they don't realise about it, and they say, hang on a second, you've got a GPL license in there, and oh no, it's embedded deep in your application, and now you're going to have to do something. Usually there's 1 or 2 dodgy licenses sitting in most software. I think that I've seen.
Does that also do, like, is it transient dependencies they call them? So dependencies are dependencies?
Dependencies, yeah, it does.
So right away down.
Yeah. It does. It's pretty good. Like I say, dead easy to set up as well.
Does it notify you of dubious behaviour from packages like Moth that had the thread.sleep in it if you didn't pay for their license?
No,
a couple of months ago.
It doesn't. It doesn't. Unless somebody raised it as a vulnerability.
Right.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I've recently actually done a course with Cast, who are another. I should have put them on there really, shouldn't I? Seems I'm now a certified user. They actually do go beyond the vulnerability database, and they have a list of things that are vulnerabilities that they think are going to come up but haven't yet actually been reported in the database. So they kind of give you a little sneak peek at what's coming as well. And a few of them are doing that. It's a big area. This is growing and growing and growing in terms of people's importance. I'm talking again, that's cheating. Any other questions? No. There we go. First lightning talk done. Thank you very much.